The dining facility at Forward Operating Base Hawthorne buzzed under fluorescent light. The HVAC hummed over the sharp scent of disinfectant and warm metal trays. Outside, the sky still held the last blue of night after a successful pre-dawn run. First Lieutenant Ava Morgan stepped in with a tray balanced tight to her chest. Operational camouflage pattern pressed crisp. Boots clean, eyes rimmed with the kind of focus that follows long nights. She scanned for a seat and kept her shoulders even. Near the center sat a Navy SEAL element led by Lieutenant Commander Cole Harris. Faces dusty. Sleeves rolled, energy burning off in quiet laughs that still smelled of cordite and road dust. Their rifles were cleared and stored on the weapon rack by the entrance, where they belonged. A comment floated from the table. Light on the surface and heavy underneath. The kind that tests where respect begins. Ava answered without heat. Only steady breath and plain words that every role protects lives in different ways. The room felt the difference before anyone admitted it. Forks paused. Conversations thinned to the scrape of chairs and the low beat of the vents. Somewhere in that stillness, a reminder surfaced that a choice made at 3 o'clock had set this team on a safer line, and that was why the cafeteria began to freeze. No screens flickered here, because secure material stays behind the heavy door. In a few minutes, they would learn why that rule had saved them. The base wakes with a low generator hum that settles into the ribs of the buildings. Fluorescent light paints the concrete in a pale wash, while the HVAC rolls a steady thrum through the halls. Fine dust rides every airflow and settles on operational camouflage pattern sleeves and name tapes. Forward Operating Base Hawthorne runs on small rituals tied to movement and meals. The dining facility sits close to the central walkway, bright and clean with the sting of disinfectant and warm steel trays. A weapon rack stands inside the entrance, and everyone knows to clear and rack before they step to the line. Down the corridor, the Joint Operations Center breathes in maps and radio traffic. The air is cooler, the chatter clipped, the tempo practical. Past another checkpoint, the sensitive compartmented information facility waits behind a heavy door. Quiet as a library and just as guarded. Access control is a ritual of its own. Badge check, common access card with personal identification number, and eyes on the no personal electronic sign. The door seals behind each person, and the room takes on that soft hush that comes only when no signals can leak. First Lieutenant Ava Morgan works here. She is a United States Air Force intelligence officer with AFSC 14 Newtons, recently rotated from Joint Base Langley Eustis, and her days lean toward nights. She moves between desks and screens with a practiced calm that looks slow and is anything but slow. Ava lives on night shifts that blur into each other. Coffee goes cold on the corner of her keyboard while the clock ticks past 2 and slides toward 3 in that quiet way that belongs to a forward base. She keeps a whiteboard beside her monitor that tracks a northeast approach and a southern approach with simple arrows and times. MQ-9 Reaper crews stream video and metadata into the secure network. Ava watches sanitized replays on SIPRnet for post-mission review and marks tactical overlays only inside the secure room. Nothing classified shows in public spaces because the rule is simple and it is followed. Back at the dining facility, a Navy SEAL element returns from the pre-dawn run. Lieutenant Commander Cole Harris takes a seat with his team while sleeves stay rolled and boots stay dusty. The mood is a mix of fatigue and a thin wire of adrenaline that hums beneath the talk. Procedure is not a suggestion, and it shows. Rifles are cleared and placed on the weapon rack by the door before anyone reaches for a tray. No weapons lean on walls, and no one tries to shortcut a safety step, because shortcuts do not belong in a place like this. The two cultures brush past each other all day. Operators carry the dust and weight of the last movement, while analysts carry the weight of patterns and probabilities. Both are tired in different ways, and both measure success by the same quiet metric that asks who made it back. Ava notices small things and lets them guide her rhythm. She hears the generator pitch shift when the load changes and reads it like weather. She notes when the HVAC cycles and how the scent of disinfectant cuts through the warm smell of food. and she files those cues against the timeline on the board. Inside the sensitive compartmented information facility, the screens glow and the sound floor stays low. Sanitized ISR replays live here, behind the heavy door, with overlays that highlight paths and edges without revealing more than needed. Outside the door, the world keeps moving on, cleared chatter and unclassified plans. Cole Harris does the same with his team. He watches posture, checks hands, and reads the walk to decide who needs rest and who needs water first. He knows the plan changed for a reason, and he files that thought for the next brief, not the dining room. The base settles into the post-mission cycle. Plates clatter and voices soften while the sky shifts from deep blue to pale gold. In the quiet between steps, Ava holds to a line she learned early, that some people act on the front line and others protect them from the shadows. The question lives there, and it is simple. What is the worth of work that no one sees when it goes right? And if that unseen work keeps operators safe for one more morning, is that not the point that matters most? The dining facility at Forward Operating Base Hawthorne holds a steady fluorescent buzz that softens into the clatter of trays. Disinfectant lingers in the air while the HVAC lays a cool ribbon across warm tile. Cleared rifles sit on the weapon rack by the entrance, tagged and safe, exactly where they belong. First, Lieutenant Ava Morgan steps through with a tray balanced in both hands. Operational camouflage pattern is pressed sharp, and her boots are clean, a quiet tell from hours spent in the intel spaces. At a center table, a Navy SEAL element led by Lieutenant Commander Cole Harris settles into tired seats with dusty sleeves and alert eyes. A light remark drifts from the group, the kind that reads like humor and lands like a test. Forks pause for a beat, then move again. The noise level dips just enough for the room to listen without looking. Ava sets her tray on the edge of an open table and turns with a calm that feels practiced. She keeps her shoulders even and her voice low, explaining that service comes in different shapes and each one aims at the same outcome. There is no heat in it, only a steady line that does not bend. A short laugh answers, more reflex than unkindness, and the pressure to perform flickers in the air. Ava declines it without effort. She states that no sensitive material is ever displayed in a cafeteria, and that secure information remains behind the heavy door built for it. The moment reroutes. Ava invites Lieutenant Commander Harris and Master Chief Ryan Burke to the Joint Operations Center and the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility for a proper explanation. She adds that the change before 3 o'clock can be discussed in a secure space, not here among trays and open tables. Silence creeps into the gaps between voices. Eyes lift, then drift away, and the fluorescent buzz grows noticeable again. The shift is not dramatic, but it has weight, the kind that comes from composure rather than volume. Etiquette stays clean through the pause. No one raises a hand for a salute because salutes are not used in this setting. Weapons remain cleared and racked by the door, and forms of address hold steady, with Lieutenant Commander and Master Chief given their due. Cole Harris reads the room with the habit of someone used to making calls on thin margins. His posture settles, not in surrender, but in respect for process. Master Chief Burke watches with the even gaze of a senior enlisted leader who has seen good judgment change outcomes before breakfast. Ava nods once and reaches for her tray. The decision is simple and professional. Leave the public space and take the conversation to the right room. Chairs scrape. Conversations restart. And the path toward the secure door becomes the next step in a story that is finally ready to be told. The hallway outside the dining facility carries the last of the cafeteria noise. Trays clatter once, then fade to a low murmur. First Lieutenant Ava Morgan sets an easy pace toward operations. Lieutenant Commander Cole Harris and Master Chief Ryan Burke fall in beside her. Their steps match the corridor rhythm. Dust lifts and settles with each stride. The Joint Operations Center sits ahead with calm lights and steady screens. A watchstander glances up and nods them through the outer control point. The room holds the scent of cold air and dry plastic. Ava keeps the path professional. No small talk, only the work in front of them. At the next door, a sign states no personal electronics. Cole and Burke check pockets by habit and carry nothing that would break the rule. The checkpoint hums with quiet purpose. Badge check comes first. The reader gives a soft click and a green wink. Ava presents her common access card and enters her personal identification number. The heavy door swings inward on a slow hinge. Air pressure shifts and a hush replaces the corridor sound. The sensitive compartmented information facility feels like a library that runs on electricity. No one salutes here. Ranks are clear without gestures. Everyone holds to the etiquette that keeps focus on the mission. Ava moves to a secure workstation. She logs in on SIPRnet and opens a sanitized replay for a post-mission brief. Nothing on the screen shows classification markings. The display resolves into simple shapes and clean overlays. Paths and edges sit over a muted map with no sensitive labels. The audio stays off to keep the noise floor low. Cole stands at an easy parade rest. Burke plants his boots and watches the cursor track a route line. Their faces carry the long morning without complaint. Ava outlines the command path in quiet steps. Indicators rose on the night shift and triggered a spot report to the watch. Colonel Dana Whitaker and J2 validated the signals and coordinated cross-checks. Operations reviewed the recommendation and acted on risk. J3 issued a fragmentary order at 2:45 a.m. The change shifted the plan from a northeast approach to a southern approach. She keeps the tone even and the language plain. No flourish. No drama. Only the sequence that kept the plan aligned with reality. The room holds them in its stillness. The air handler smooths the background with a constant hush. Keyboards tap from a nearby desk and then go still again. Ava adjusts the replay to the critical window. The timeline bar sits just before the change that reached the team before step-off. She lets the cursor rest for a beat. Cole gives a small nod that means ready. Burke narrows his eyes as if he can feel the terrain through the screen. They both lean in by an inch. Ava steadies her hand on the trackball. She confirms that all material is sanitized and appropriate for a post-mission view. The rest stays compartmented as it should. Answers are close now. The cafeteria noise might as well be on another planet. The story is about to move from assumption to evidence. Ava draws a slow breath that no one hears. She thinks of the time note that follows in minutes. 3:00 a.m. Then she starts the replay and lets the facts speak inside the secure room. The sanitized replay opens in the sensitive compartmented information facility, with the room held in steady hush. White, hot, infrared from an MQ-9, Reaper washes the compound in clean contrasts. Tactical overlays draw simple lines that mark walls, alleys, and likely entry points without sensitive labels. First Lieutenant Ava Morgan keeps her voice even and her cadence slow. She notes the window between 2:00 a.m. and 2:45 a.m. when indicators stacked faster than routine. Lieutenant Commander Cole Harris and Master Chief Ryan Burke watch from a respectful distance with posture set for work. The first clip shows the compound perimeter in black hot to make heat-sink features stand out. A narrow lane on the northeast side cools quickly after foot traffic, which signals recent movement, and then a deliberate pause. The overlay highlights the lane as a potential choke point. Ava advances 1 minute at a time and adds a thin route line over the northeast approach. She explains that this line matched the original plan before the change. The room takes in the detail without comment because this is how post-mission review stays useful. She brings up a spectrum plot that has been sanitized for training and retains only non-sensitive descriptors. The trace shows irregular frequency hopping that does not fit local militia habits from previous nights. She labels it as an anomaly associated with a low probability of intercept or low probability of detection waveform. Traffic analysis spiked during that same window. The count of short transmissions rose and then tightened into bursts that lined up with movement on the screen. Ava marks those bursts as behavioral anchors rather than proof, because behavior over time carries more weight than a single frame. Direction finding and time difference of arrival triangulation came next. She points to an area where virtual bearings converge near the northeast entry point. The overlay renders the convergence as a small polygon that hugs the outside wall where the lane narrows. Ava pauses to let the geometry speak. She adds that bearings like these are never perfect, which is why they are used with other cues. The Reaper video provides the pattern, and the signals layer provides the push. The next clip returns to White Hot to show personnel moving equipment. Heat signatures kneel and rise along the northeast wall, in a sequence that suggests emplacement work rather than casual rest. No faces are visible, and no identities are implied because this review stays on tactics. She tags 2 positions with neutral icons that stand for likely PKM machine guns. The fields of fire are drawn as cones that cross where the lane forces a turn. A third icon sits deeper, placed as a likely RPG-7 post with a backblast safe zone sketched behind it. Ava explains that the cones are estimates built from common engagement arcs and sightlines. The goal is not to guess perfectly, but to model risk in a way operators can use. Overlapping fire at that bend would create a prepared kill zone for any team entering from the northeast. Cole Harris leans an inch closer. He traces the route line with his eyes and stops at the turn where the cones meet. Master Chief Ryan Burke folds his arms and holds his breath for a beat, as if hearing the first snap of incoming fire that never came. Ava rewinds to 2:15 a.m. and steps forward in 30-second bites. Transmissions rise again, then fall to quiet. Foot traffic cools to dark in Black Hot and then warms in White Hot as new bodies cycle in, which fits relief drilling on the guns. She allows the clip to run without narration for several seconds. The room lets the pattern work on its own. This is the moment where visuals confirm the math. Now she walks them through the command path in clear steps. She filed a spot report with the watch when the second set of indicators aligned. The J2 desk notified Colonel Dana Whitaker with a concise summary and a request to coordinate verification. Verification paired the Reaper crew with a partner collection feed that cross-checked bearings and timing. J2 assessed confidence as high for an ambush build on the northeast approach. That assessment moved to J3 operations with a recommendation to reroute to the southern approach. J3 issued a fragmentary order at 2:45 a.m. The order reached the element before the final step-off toward 3:00 a.m. Cole nods once at the timing because it matches what his team received in the field. Ava brings up a single frame that shows the southern approach path. The overlay marks fewer sightlines and no convergence polygon on that side. The route stays exposed for less time and avoids the narrow lane that formed the kill zone. She contrasts both paths on a split screen that removes any sensitive annotation. The northeast path presents a tight turn under crossing fire. The southern path offers depth and lateral options with better cover. Cole speaks in a low tone that carries acceptance without drama. He notes how the first 3 men would have entered the bend with no room to maneuver. Burke adds a simple observation about how the second gun would have caught the trail element. Ava keeps the posture of a brief officer and lets the operators process. She states that the evidence did not guarantee a trap, but the pattern raised risk beyond acceptable. The job was to lower that risk before anyone crossed the start line. She shows one final clip where the northeast lane remains quiet after the team chose the southern route. The pattern of transmissions fades after 3:00 a.m., as if the bait went unused. The icons on the overlay dim and the screen returns to the base map. Etiquette stays tight in the room. No salutes occur because this is not the setting for that. Forms of address remain correct, and the tone stays joint and professional. Ava closes her notes and rests a hand on the workstation. She repeats that her work exists to protect those who act on the ground. She says it like a fact that does not need to be sold. Cole and Burke share a glance that carries weight and no complaint. They both understand how close the line can be between a clean exit and a hard morning. Quiet appreciation settles in without ceremony. Ava locks the session and signs out of SIP/net. The sanitized files close and the screen returns to the generic menu. The heavy door remains between this review and the rest of the base. As it should. The replay has done what it needed to do. It turned a set of early clues into a choice that kept people alive. The respect in the room shifts a small step. ready to move with them when they walk back into the light. The hallway outside the secure room holds a different kind of quiet. The air handler smooths the edges of footsteps, and the heavy door seals the past few minutes behind them. First Lieutenant Ava Morgan steps out with Lieutenant Commander Cole Harris and Master Chief Ryan Burke at her side. Etiquette lives here in small choices. No one salutes indoors in this context, and no one needs to. Burke sets his heels and stands at attention for a steady beat. A silent nod to work done well. Ava meets his eyes and gives a small return of posture. Not ceremony. Just respect. The moment lands with more meaning than a speech could carry. Cole closes the space with a firm handshake that belongs to joint work. Not a photo. He invites her to sit beside him at the next mission debrief. The offer is plain and professional. An acknowledgement that planning improves when the right voice is in the room. Ava answers with a simple agreement that keeps the focus on the team. They move back along the corridor at an easy pace. The hush of the sensitive compartmented information facility fades into the busier sound of the Joint Operations Center. Screens glow behind glass as watchstanders keep the rhythm steady. The dining facility greets them with light and the smell of disinfectant again. Rifles stay cleared and racked by the entrance, where a sign reinforces the rule. Voices fall to a murmur as eyes track the group. Curious but restrained. Earlier teasing does not return. Glances shift to nods, and shoulders turn to make space at a table. Respect shows up in body language that says, the room understands what it did not see. Ava keeps the conversation unclassified and simple. She thanks the team for the seat and mentions that everyone does their part to bring people home. She does not mention sensors, routes, or timelines in public, and no one asks her to. Cole keeps the tone the same. He checks on hydration, food, and rest cycles with a few quiet cues that carry authority without volume. Burke floats down the line, reading faces and letting his presence settle the table. The cafeteria returns to its normal beat. Metal meets plastic in soft clatter, and the HVAC lays a cool ribbon over warm chatter. A few operators step out to the hallway, moving with that loose posture that follows long mornings. Ava rises with her tray and offers a small nod to the table. The gesture is enough, and it fits the place. Cole answers with a brief look that promises follow-through at the debrief. They split at the corridor, each toward the next task. Ava turns toward the intel spaces to close her notes and sign what needs signing. Cole and Burke angle toward their team room to stack lessons and rest. Down the far end, the flight line breathes hot air through an open door. A rotor thump rides the breeze, slow at first and then stronger. Somewhere outside, a pave hawk begins to spin up. The sound gathers in the walls in a way that feels like closure. It is not loud, but it is clear. The next scene waits out there in the heat and dust, where a quiet kind of calm can settle in. Heat rolls across the flight line in slow waves that blur the edges of concrete. The HH-60 Pave Hawk sits with pre-flight complete and blades beginning to bite the air. Rotor thump grows from a soft patter to a steady beat that you can feel in the ribs. Ground crew stands at their marks with hearing protection snug and hand signals clean. A crew chief watches the arc of the blades and scans the perimeter. The safety standoff is clear, and cones mark the line that no one crosses. First, Lieutenant Ava Morgan stops well outside the painted edge and plants her boots in the dust. Hot wind lifts grit against her sleeves and tugs at the hem of her operational camouflage pattern blouse. She keeps her eyes on the aircraft and lets the rest of the base fall away. Inside the cockpit, crew sits at stations with checklists stowed. The tail wheel bounces once as the head speed steadies and the nose eases light. A marshal raises a final signal and the aircraft nods like a person making up its mind. The radio call passes over the ramp in a plain voice that carries through the headsets and into the morning Pave Hawk lifting. The helicopter slides a few feet, tilts forward, and climbs through its own dust. Heat shimmer wraps the fuselage and turns it into a wavering shape against the pale sky. Ava watches from her safe lane and lets a lesson return from Nellis Air Force Base. Courage is often quiet, more steady than loud, more patient than fast. She thinks of Colonel Dana Whitaker and the way that truth was taught without fanfare. One deliberate choice at a time. Fuel scent hangs under the rotor wash and fades as the aircraft climbs. The crew sets a clean track along the runway edge and then turns toward the horizon. The ramp grows still again, except for the faint echo of blades and the sound of the wind moving leftover dust. Ava breathes in and lets the breath go. Slow and even. The tight coil between her shoulders loosens a little as she accepts what the night proved. Unseen work can shelter those who act. And sometimes that is enough for a day to feel complete. Monitors cast a soft blue wash across the intelligence workspace, while the server stack keeps a steady hum in the background. The room feels sealed and measured. Air cool and still. First Lieutenant Ava Morgan sits at a secure workstation and finishes a post-mission after-action report on SIPRnet. Her cursor blinks over the last line as she checks the timeline and closes supporting tabs that do not belong in the report. A notification for a recommendation for commendation slides into the corner of the screen and waits. She closes it without opening because recognition is not the point. The desk holds a small framed photo from Nellis Air Force Base with Colonel Dana Whitaker standing beside her under bright desert sun. The frame leans against the monitor where she can see it without thinking about it. No personal electronics rest on the desk because the room keeps strict rules that everyone respects. The light from the hallway stays blocked by the heavy door, and the sign that reminds people to keep voices low. No sensitive details are spoken aloud, and nothing on the screens shows more than is needed. The atmosphere is careful and calm in the way of a controlled space. A faint pulse of helicopter rotors reaches in from the night and fades like a heartbeat moving down the flight line. Ava breathes, saves the report, and returns her hands to the keys with quiet focus. The arc settles in humility as she leans forward and gets back to work. Thanks for spending time with this story and for honoring the people who keep others safe in quiet ways. If you have a moment when your unseen work made a difference, share it below and type "protect" over pride so others can find your comment. If this resonated, a soft like and subscribe helps. And the next video looks at how intelligence and operators plan together to bring teams home, step by step, with respect and good judgment guiding every call. Stay safe, stay kind, and keep showing up for the work that rarely gets applause but always matters most.